It's the Indie Writers Club with Cara Clare and James Blatch. A place to relax, chat, learn and vent about life as an independent author. Get episode alerts and links at indiewritersclub.com. Now, here's Cara and James.
Welcome to the Indie Writers Club. I am Cara Clare.
Thank you for welcoming me. I am James Blatch.
How are you, James Blatch?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm sort of had one of those fairly nitty weeks where everything you touch seems to not work first time. And so instead of something taking 5 minutes, it takes an hour.
Yeah,
and
I feel you.
And I've got piles and piles of paper because I'm dealing with lots of sort of things that require paper. I hate paper. I resent organisations that still send me paper. I mean,
Really?
my bank.
This is funny because I just bought a printer because I haven't had a printer for about 18 months. And
Are you going to start sending me paper?
yeah, purely so I could start sending you things in the post. And it just occurred to me that I miss it for some things, just some things.
I mean, I have a printer actually, and I use it, and I quite like printing stuff. Ironically, what I don't like is my bank sending me a statement every month to tell me that they've charged me £5 bank fees, and I think because I do paperless statements, obviously you tick all those boxes, but they still send me that like it makes any difference to anybody's life. It's just a complete waste of an envelope and paper. And I'm changing the signatories on an account for our cricket club, and that is a very, very paperwork heavy thing. So So paper is a thing of the past, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, so this tells you how long ago it wasn't that long ago. So I last worked at Cambridge University Press about 15 years ago, and we were still in the marketing department every week printing off all these editorial sheets that were sort of detailing all the new books that we were publishing and posting them to America.
Wow.
Yeah. One of my jobs was to collate them.
Collate them? That sounds very American the way you said that.
Stack them.
Collate them. You sound like you're from Texas then. I'm going to collate these. I'm going to... Forrest Gump. Who's she?
We've had a moan of the week and an accent, and we're only 2 minutes in.
She told me I got to collate them.
God. Anyway, bye everyone. It's been fun.
I'll tell you what I love. I actually enjoy printing. It's quite pleasurable printing stuff, particularly if you, like, for instance, you want to read the first 10,000 words of your book and you think, I'm going to print it out and sit in the sofa with a pen in my hand. Love that.
There is something different about that. And I've got a Remarkable tablet. And actually, we said we were going to do a tech episode.
What is a Remarkable tablet?
So a Remarkable tablet is a e-ink tablet. So it's like a Kindle, but it's big and you can load any documents on there. You can also use it as a notepad and scribble, and it syncs to an app on your phone, and you can type on it. So it has a keyboard now. So if you want to type out in the sunshine, it's amazing because it's hard to do that with your laptop. So I do try to load my novel onto there now and annotate it. Because you can load on PDFs, and it is literally like writing on paper, and you can obviously store infinite documents on there, but it's just not quite the same as actually having it printed on paper. And I'm somebody who likes to use different coloured pens and all that kind of stuff when I'm annotating a story. So that was partly why I got the printer, actually, because I realised that I'm missing that part of my process where I do actually print something out and scribble on it. But try the Remarkable. It is good for when you're traveling because it's extremely lightweight and you can put a load of stuff
I
on.
love paper and pen. I mean, I love my notepads.
Yeah.
I've operated for so many years. I've operated with lists on notepads. Yeah.
I've got into a shelf behind me. Just I think you can see it's stacked full of notebooks.
Yeah. I don't write, they're to-do lists. It's not my writing. I never handwrite. My handwriting is terrible. I should have been a doctor. It's so bad.
We should do that tech episode, though.
Yeah, we should definitely do it.
Favorite gadgets.
Yeah, we should definitely do a tech episode. We're going to talk about serials, writing series today, which I'm excited about. But we should say a big thank you to everybody who has joined us on Patreon, our first ever Patreon. So we have 3 tiers, and we've got people in all 3 tiers. The most popular one is the main character, which is the top tier.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So the reliable narrator and the quirky friend are the other 2 tiers. Now, for the people who are reliable narrators and main characters, they get a live Q&A with us once a month. We're going to do that next week. We're going to start that on Thursday next week. So that's I can't remember now, 17th, I think, something 17th, like that. Yeah. Couple of days before I fly to Aruba. And we'll do that at 7 p.m. UK time in the evening, which hopefully suits anyone in the States as well. And we'll have a little Zoom call, and we'll chew the fat shoot the breeze. I always want to say chew the breeze and always get corrected saying that's chew the fat, shoot the breeze.
There'll be plenty of banter, but not too much banter. We will also be seriously answering people's questions.
Mainly banter. Yes, we've got that. And there's also a super secret Discord channel that's going to be launched by the time this podcast goes out on Friday for the main characters as well. So we can be involved in that. Don't forget, we have a Facebook group as well, which of course is completely open to everybody to join. And you can get to that at indiewritersclub.com/Facebook. But if you would like to take it to the next level, take it up a notch, you can go to indiewritersclub.com/support. And that will take you to Patreon. You can be one of our supporters and get some FaceTime with us.
Yeah, but I think maybe next week we should start reading out the names of the supporters.
Yes.
Yep.
We'll do that. Yes, we will absolutely do that.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Really good idea. Yeah, we'll start that next week.
You can tell that we don't discuss this stuff before we start recording, can't you?
Give people a few more moments. Been dealing with some retreat issues this week. So there's been a slight hiccup with payments and stuff, but I think we've got around that. We do have a late arrival. I'm not going to announce who they are, but a couple are coming. He's pretty well known in the industry, and they potentially are going to rent, because there's no room at the inn anymore, but they're potentially going to rent the lodge, which is this Tudor cottage at I don't know if you noticed it, at the gatehouse as you go into the estate. It's a typical kind of lodge where, I don't know, the gatekeeper would live, but it's like a 2 or 3 bedroom little house, and they're potentially going to rent that. So it'll be really exciting.
Is this the person I think it is who you told me about yesterday?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's exciting.
So basically parties there every night in
when the main
lodge.
hall closes down, off to the lodge, everyone.
They've got a fridge in there. They've got a cooker, kitchen, everything.
Our accommodation's nice too. I don't know, those watching on YouTube, I'm having real hair issues today. I don't know I don't understand what's happening. Because I've taken my headphones off, it's messed with the whole thing.
Yeah, probably headphones on.
Did we have any news items this week?
Well, I was going to, just to wrap up on the retreat,
Sorry,
I was going to say, that's yet to be confirmed. I'm waiting for some stuff back from the organisation. But if that happens, if those 2 people go to the lodge, that will free up 1 space. So we will have a space. We didn't do an official wait list. I know people joined the wait list at the beginning, but drop me an email, james@indiewritersclub.com if you're interested, and I'll do a sort of unofficial wait list. But there potentially is going to be a space opening up next week, probably. So I'll let you know about that.
I'm so excited about it, actually. I keep thinking about it, and it's just like, especially after SPS, it's going to be lovely to just know that we've got a few days to actually write. And I mean, I feel like you're going to be lying down in a dark room.
It's perfect decompression with your friends, isn't it? It's what we want to do. So I'm very excited about it as well.
Yeah.
So the other news, you sent me a little TikTok of Fiona Lucas, who I've met, and she's a trad author. Mm-hmm. But she's very sort of pro-indie and very indie mindset. And she talks a lot about doing your own marketing and stuff. And I think she should self-publish. I think she has to start self-publishing, actually.
She might. She's great on TikTok. She gives a lot of advice. She's a fantastic author. But she posted a video of a protest outside Meta headquarters in London. And I think they were going to serve them with a notice to stop stealing our copyright, sort of thing, but it hadn't been publicized anywhere, and I felt like if it had been, it would have been a much bigger affair. But essentially Meta closed the doors and they asked if 2 representatives could go in to deliver the letter, and Meta just locked the doors and wouldn't let anyone in. So they peacefully protested outside for a couple of hours and then went home. So it was a bit of an anticlimax to
we didn't know anything about it. They hadn't contacted us or I don't think any of the other podcasts or anything. So we didn't get the word out and didn't know it was happening. I did know the regular show business podcast I listen to, which is here in the UK, Richard Osman, who's a writer, and Marina Hyde also publish some books of non-fiction, but they talk generally about film and TV, about books as well, occasionally. But they talk this week about the Meta thing. And, they had a very, very similar conversation to the one you and I had, which is, there's some scope for kind of wide-scale learning, but this has really crossed a line from a $1.3 trillion company that didn't even pay the cover price and took from a site that's actively harming authors.
And I think something I've noticed this week, though, is that there's just a lot of fear going around. Like, I keep seeing just so many people who seem like, I think because of, globally what's going on, and especially in the US, authors who are over there, there's just this sense among a lot of people that our jobs as authors are kind of at risk. And I was kind of trying to drill down into why that is, because I might be being naive, but I just don't see our jobs disappearing. I see the way that we do them being different. I mean, so the thing that I have to compare it to is when I worked at Cambridge University Press, it was when ebooks were just being invented. And I don't know if anybody remembers when ebooks had just been invented. Everybody thought it was going to be the end of publishing. It was going to be the end of publishing. It was going to be the end of print books. Trad publishing was going to collapse. All bookshops were going to collapse. It was, disaster. So there was that camp. And then there was the camp that didn't believe that ebooks were going to be a thing. They were so stuck in the mud. They were like, no, it's not going to be a thing. So I worked in digital business development, and my boss was a little bit of a maverick, and he had kind of been one of the first people to cotton on to this whole ebook thing. So they'd kind of humoured him and given him this little department. And I should probably say this is from my point of view of the things I was told at the time. And one of my jobs was to catalogue things in the archive that were being turned into ebooks. And we literally had to tick a little box to say whether we contacted the author themselves or their relatives if they passed away, and asked permission for them to be turned into ebooks. And it was very much kind of done as a sort of, we'll let him get on with it because he keeps making a noise about all this silly ebook nonsense. So there were those two camps. There was the people who thought ebooks were the end of the world, and there were people who thought they were absolute nonsense. And what happened was, yes, the industry changed. It changed massively. The people who told my boss at the time that they thought he was, talking nonsense had to eat humble pie, because ebooks did become a thing, but they also didn't destroy the industry. It changed. A lot of bookshops went under. The way that we publish changed, but it wasn't the end of the world, and people's jobs as authors and publishers didn't disappear. So I think we just need to try and take a little bit of a step back and understand that these kind of waves of things do happen. And yes, this is a big one, and it's a huge, huge seismic shift, but it doesn't mean that we're all going to be not able to write anymore.
No, I agree with that. It is, and I think that applies to the marketing side as much as anything else. To the the cover designers who panic, and the people providing, and voiceover artists. They're the ones who need to understand that there's some adaptation needed, and embracing new technology is always the long-term win. Always. There's no hiding from it, pretending it's not going to happen. Never works out. And I understand if you're in 2009 when the Kindles launched, if you're a print company, that's all you do is you print books, it's going to look threatening and worrying to you. But in this case, that was a false dawn, because as many books are being printed today, I mean, there's always going to be print versions, although that's not true necessarily. There are lots of ebooks that are perhaps print on demand and so on, but there's always going to be demand for print. So there's things you have to wait and see. You're right. I think the fundamental thing here is, can AI write books? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And if you think AI can write books, you're looking at it differently from me, because I'm in a few groups where people are actively using AI to write their books. And if you look at the posts people post in, they are saying, I can't get this right. I can't get Claude to understand my style. I fed in, 50,000 words, doing the last part of the chapter, last few chapters of the novel. And you get lots of responses, and there's 100 responses down there saying, well, if you try this, you want AI to help you as a writer, as a human, bringing your humanity to your book. It is like it's like having a word processor. It's not like having somebody's going to do your writing for you. You can work closely and hard with it, and you'll get some results that will help you with your writing. But it's augmenting you as a human. If you take the human away from that, there's nothing worth reading.
Yep.
They are crap. The books that come out from AI are crap. And actually, there's a positive here, is that the lazy people who don't want to write books and are just the book stuffers from before, and the low content books, they're using AI to generate crap. So those people are taken away from tempted to try to put some time and effort in and write books. And some of them may have written decent books. So that narrows the market a little bit. So I think that's the safety net I've got in my mind, is that there's always going to be space for humans writing books. You can talk. I have to let the dog out, so ignore the fact I'm going.
That's good, because I had something to say. Because I think, so people's counter argument to that is often, well, but they're going to get better. You know, the whole thing about Meta stealing our books or whatever they did is that it's going to train AI, and eventually, you know, think how far it's come. Eventually it will be able to replace us. So my thing that I've been thinking about this week is, why would you want to replace us? Even if AI gets to the point where it can write a novel as well as a human can. Why? Because it's not volume. Volume is, you know, one of the benefits of AI is that it does it very quickly. But volume isn't the path to success. We've already got way more books existing than anyone can possibly read all of them. There's already people churning out lots and lots of crappy books, as we discussed. So volume isn't the key. For publishers, yes, okay, if they've got a nice AI machine that's producing books that are bestsellers, they don't have to pay the author. But the author is the one who generates the fans. The author is a huge asset to a publishing house. That's why they fight to get the popular authors, because they're the ones who generate the event, the fans, all of that kind of thing. So it's just kind of like, don't undervalue us as a creative professional and the value of our brains and what we bring to the table, which is that little kind of something that you can't get from an AI. Even if technically they get to the point where they can write a novel as well as a human can, who benefits from us being cut out of the process?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to kind of get through to people. Even if traditional publishing gets rid of us, because they go, we don't need authors anymore. We'll use our AI machine and we'll generate bestsellers. Okay, great. Well, indies are already out of that system anyway. We're already doing our own thing. You're telling me we can't compete with something that an AI wrote? That's rubbish. Of course we can.
Yeah.
So it just, I just want people to really,
I think
paralyzed by the fear.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, that you build a platform as an author, and that's how you sell books. And the successful authors are ones who built a good platform and a good following. It's hard to do that when you're not a human, even if you're human behind the AI. And I think there are some romance authors, spicy romance authors, who don't want their public image in a known, no identity. And I think they're at a disadvantage. It's hard with just a cartoon image of yourself to have that personal touch. Whereas you look at what, you know, people like Lucy Scorn, the big indies have done, that massive platform they've built. That's why they're the most successful. That's why James Patterson's books are written with somebody else. I mean, you know, J.D. Barker's doing brilliantly writing alongside James Patterson, #1, I noticed last week. But why doesn't the publisher say, "Oh, J.D. Barker, you're a fantastic writer. We'll do your series," because J.D. Barker's profile is good, but it's down here. And James Patterson's one of the biggest selling authors on the planet. He has that big platform. That's exactly the point you made, Cara. That's what sells books, not what's in them as such. So yeah, and
Yeah, and I think we do tend to undervalue that about ourselves. And, you know, if you go to a book signing, you have readers queuing up. And this blew my mind the first time I did it. And I had people coming up to me and their little hands were shaking because they'd written down what they wanted to say to me. And they were nervous to meet me. And I was behind the table, terrified to meet them. And I was like, you're not going to get that from somebody queuing up to meet an algorithm. That human thing. And I mean, it's a huge philosophical thing. I don't want to take up the whole episode by talking about it, but part of why we read and why we write is to feel that connection with another human. So even if technically the book is good because AI has smashed being able to write a book technically, I don't think you're going to get that emotional connection and brand loyalty between a reader and a machine. That's my personal opinion. So just don't freak out, everybody, and be totally paralyzed by what's going on at the moment. Try to remember why we do this and what makes us special.
worry not. Be part of the Indie Writers Club, where humanity, until the robots kill us all, and the robots will eventually kill us all, but I do think that's a few thousand years off.
Yes, that's to be polite to them, but don't give be polite.
Always say thank you.
But don't worry.
I've recently, I'm using Claude quite a lot for mainly marketing stuff and blurbs and stuff, and what else? But a few other things. I've stopped saying thank you and please. I noticed, because it responds exactly the same way. Of course it does. Yeah. But I don't know. It's a bit of a risk, isn't it?
I had to GPT to stop being so effusive the other day because it was driving me nuts. I was trying to plot something, and I just use it as a kind of way to almost organize my own thoughts and think backwards and forwards. And everything I said, it was like, that is a phenomenal idea. And I was like, I don't need your over enthusiasm, because whatever I say, you're going to tell me it's a phenomenal idea. I'm literally just asking for the nuts and bolts of, would this work in comparison to what we said before, because I don't have enough memory to remember what I said before. I'm not asking for your cheerleading. And then it apologized.
Yeah. Talking of which, just on that note, I noticed that Pro Writing Aid yesterday, or I saw Pro Writing Aid yesterday, pushing a new product, which is a advanced beta reader, like an artificial beta reader. But I wasn't entirely sure how different it was from the critique tool. So I need to talk to our friends there.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but definitely of interest, because actually getting good beta readers is hard, and getting that kind of feedback that says this doesn't really work. And this is why.
Yeah, because that was when we did the manuscript assessment. That was something I was thinking of. And also, I would really like it to have the kind of ChatGPT feature of being able to then ask questions. So if it gave you that feedback, and then you could, as the author, ask it questions or explain a little bit more and say, well, I thought that I did this because of this. Does that not work? That would take it to the next level.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what they do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of PWA, so I'm sure it'll be a decent tool. And I've got a chat lined up with Tom next week.
Exciting.
So, okay, right. We are going to talk about writing in series and serials. And I suppose we should start off by saying why would you write in serials or series? Why not just write a load of standalone, not even loosely related novels?
I mean, the absolute key reason is to make money.
Yeah.
That is the fundamental reason that everybody suggests that you write in a series, because it's very hard to break even or make profit on just one book. If you are drawing people into book one and then they've got another 2, 3, 4, 6 books to read in the series, you're going to make your money on the rest of that series. It's not impossible to do it on a standalone. It's just a lot harder. And also getting people to buy into your brand and just, absorb more of you and come back for more after the series is done. So that's the fundamental reason, is easier to make money if you've got a series that is going to drag people through it.
Okay, so there are levels, aren't there, of series? There's the kind of, as I sort of alluded to, the loosely connected, same universe, but standalone novels. So you could pick any one of them up. And actually, I think probably James Bond is an example of that. You could pick up any James Bond book and read it. There's a little bit of a thread going through. And the books gets married briefly at one point, but generally it's a fairly formulaic story that takes place at a certain time. It doesn't really matter whether it's back or future. And I write like that. I mean, my 3 books so far have been the same characters or crossover of characters, but funnily enough, I've written them in reverse order in terms of time, and I think they read quite well in that way, because you read this fairly dramatic story that happens to somebody in 3031, and it's a bit like why people want to read your prequel novellas. Suddenly, there's quite an intriguing story what happened 5 years before. So I do that way. The other way, and I think this is probably your train, is the series as opposed to serial. Is that right? I can't remember which way round they are. But anyway.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the series where basically you get to the end, and I've read one of your books, it does literally get to the end and basically says, I wonder what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Giant cliffhanger. I mean, you don't have to have a giant cliffhanger, but yeah. So I think certain genres like crime and action are more action thriller sort of thing, are more suited to, it's a set of characters who you love. Like if you think about a detective series or a police procedural series, it's usually the characters that you love, and they'll maybe be an overarching plot. Sometimes there's an overarching crime or political intrigue or whatever, but a lot of the time it's their personal life and the characters who people love, and that's why they read through the series, even though the story is wrapped up individually at the end of each book. And then romance, paranormal, supernatural, fantasy, they all lean themselves to, and post-apocalyptic, this kind of literally ending on a cliffhanger. You don't have to, but a lot of them do, which is literally one overarching story over the 6 books or 3 books or however many. And you've got to read all of those, and you've got to read them in order for them to make sense.
So I'll ask you some questions about that. Obviously, I have no experience of writing this. First of all, does it not piss off your readers to end on a cliffhanger and a book? And a book they've paid $3.99 for, $4.99.
Yes and no. So one of the faux pas is not warning people. So in my genre in particular, if you put it in the blurb and they know going in that there's going to be a cliffhanger, they're okay with it. Especially if you rapid release, a lot of them will, if they know there's a cliffhanger, not read the series until the whole thing is out. or at least they want to see that the next one is on pre-order. So they know that they're going to get to the end and, the next one is in sight. But it does, in my experience, it frustrates the hell out of them, but it also is that thing that creates chatter about the book. That's when you get the social media posts that are like, oh my God, I can't believe it left it like that. I can't wait to see what happens. And that's when you get the fan theories of what's going to happen next and all of that kind of stuff. So to mitigate it, what I try to do is kind of wrap up the main piece of action in that particular book and then drop in a cliffhanger that that starts the next book, that's going to drag them through to the next one.
Okay, so one way of doing it is to have your complete book, your complete story, but then in the last couple of chapters, some development happens that opens up a new story.
Yeah, so
it's not like that's a little bit different from in my mind. And I do think your first book probably was a little bit more like the story was incomplete. I'm not saying that's a criticism, but it felt like I now need to read book 2. It's not like, oh, here's a new adventure starting. It was the questions that were raised in the book weren't answered.
Yeah, so Luna's a little bit different. So with Nova, I mean, it's still, there's an overarching plot. The main plot is not answered in the Nova books until book 6, which is the last book in that first 6-book series. There's kind of then a micro plot in each one. So that will kind of be wrapped up. So they have some answers. So people tend to, when you're writing a series, think of it in terms of loops. So you've got loops that are remaining open through the whole series and eventually they need to be closed. So they're basically the questions, the things that people want to find out, and that's why they're still reading. But you need to occasionally close a loop. You can't leave them totally unsatisfied the entire series. So you've got to have enough open loops to keep pulling them through, but you have got to give them a little bit of a sense of satisfaction every now and again so that they don't just get totally, like Lost the TV show. Was an example of where they never closed any loops. It was so frustrating that nobody wanted to watch it anymore by the end because nothing was ever answered. And when they did give you answers, it was pointless.
It was crap, the answers.
Yeah. Basically, don't do that.
My word of the day.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about TV shows, that's kind of the best way to think about it, really. When you watch a TV show, a lot of them there'll be some sense of satisfaction in an episode. There'll also be something that makes you want to keep watching to the next one because there's some unresolved issue. There's a little cliffhanger at the end. So that's kind of studying TV shows is a really good thing to do if you haven't written in a series before.
Yeah, serials. So we're just watching Slow Horses, which I've recommended to you.
I'm now on series 3.
Oh my God.
I know. Well, I was ill yesterday, so I've watched the first 2 series in the last 2 days.
I think we'll park it for another episode where we can choose a couple of TV episodes. We'll tell people in advance if they want to watch them so we can deconstruct them. But the reason I sort of fused about it and said you should watch this is because there's an example of character and story so brilliantly done. I mean, the characters are unforgettable and unique, each one of them, and the story is gripping as well. And that's, for me, it's almost one of those rare beasts that comes along where it's like the perfect storm. And
I agree.
And it made me depressed writing a spy thriller because I'm not anything like as good as Mick Herron, but inspiring at the same time. Anyway, so yeah, talk about Slow Horses. So that, just in terms of serial, I can see how that, they are completely wrapped up. Each book, each series is a book, is completely wrapped up at the end. And there's no hint at the end, I don't think. And we actually literally finished season 4, the last season, last night. There was no hint at the end that this new things happened to bring them on, to go on to the next book. But there is an overarching story. There's development. There's a kind of career paths happening around them that happens through the books. But I do think you could probably pick up any of those books and read them and be a complete story. And that's my preference. And maybe that's because I come from a slightly less adaptable audience than you do. The thriller, spy thriller, and you mentioned crime detective and so on. I do think some of the things that you can get away with because you flagged it in the blurb, whatever, I'm not sure in other genres you can. And whether that accounts with sci-fi and fantasy, I don't know.
Yeah, I think fantasy is similar, especially if you're talking romantasy. where they kind of expect it because you know that 3-book series or that 6-book series that's the complete story. So you're kind of expecting you're not going to have all the answers at the end of book 1. You know that going in. Whereas in your genre, I would expect if I picked up that book for that to be a story,
Yeah.
a complete story. So I think it's about expectations. But it's important to understand the different types of a series. If you're just starting out and you're like, okay, I know writing in a series is what I need to do in order to make money, make this profitable. It's important to have a look at those different types because you can also have a series of standalones that are just tied by a theme. So my women's fiction, for example, the series is called True Love Travels. The characters are all different, but the theme of the series is that it's a romance in different countries around the world. So the fact that it takes place in some beautiful setting and it's a romance and there's going to be a happy ending, that's what links them as a series. It's a theme, but you can go in at any point, you can read any book and the characters don't overlap.
Yeah.
So it is possible to do that too and have a way to pull your readers through to the next one.
And this is the holy grail really of having that feeling of a complete book, but the need to go on and read book 2. That's what you should be aiming for here. And I'm trying to think of good examples of this over the last few days. I mean, the obvious one I think is probably Lord of the Rings, the J.R.R. Tolkien books, where the aim that's sort of set out, the inciting incident stuff at the beginning of book 1 isn't resolved until the end of book 3. So that's 3 books you've got to read, and they're long books, to get to that story. But each book does feel like a complete story with a natural ending. So that's kind of, I mean, he's obviously a brilliant writer and lauded very much because of that classic nature of his books. But that's a good example of getting that right, of being able to deliver a complete book, but needing to read the next book in series.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the Harry Potter series, for example, each book, there is a different thing that Harry is trying to deal with. So the first book, got to find the Philosopher's Stone. Second book is whatever's going on in the Chamber of Secrets. So each one of those things is wrapped up at the end of the book. You get, Harry usually ends up injured in a hospital bed by the end of it, and then Dumbledore comes and says something encouraging to him. But the overall plot of eventually we know he's going to have to battle Voldemort at the end of the very last book, that is what pulls people through. So you get that satisfaction of the mini drama that's happening in this particular book is wrapped up. And so that's kind of why I like writing reverse harem, because in romance this can be difficult because you need to, if you're writing just a male-female romance and you're trying to make that into a 3-book series, that can be really difficult because you can't just keep having them break up and get back together and break up and get back together. Whereas with what I write, because there's a supernatural plot going on, which is what arcs over the 6 books, and because it's reverse harem, in each book, she's kind of navigating one of the particular relationships with one of the guys. So the sense of satisfaction that they're getting is because that particular romance, so like the first book, it's kind of more her and Cole. Their issues are kind of settled by the end of the first book. So that's a bit of a sense of satisfaction. And then in book 2, the emphasis is on one of the other guys, but then the supernatural plot arcs over the whole 6.
Okay. So in a marketing point of view, there's advantages and just disadvantages to these systems. So whilst I do think that is the holy grail, where you can pick up a book, it's a complete story, but you want then desperately to read the next book because there are some unresolved issues which don't take away from the completeness of the story. So that's the holy grail. If you write a series of 10 books, and we publish people at Vinci Books, and some authors say to us, so we say, rather than put up, an application for a BookBub feature deal on book 1, we're going to choose one of the other books. And we notice book 4 has really good reviews. And they say, oh, no. You can't read book 4 unless you've read 1 to 3. It makes no sense. And I often think at that point, that's high tariff to go down that route where you really, but I think this does happen in romance quite a lot. This is not going to make any sense unless you've read them in order, because you kind of restrict your marketing ability. You can't run promos, even Free Booksy and Hello Books. You can't run them on the middle books in the series. So you're just hammering book 1 the whole time.
Yeah, it does get tiring. Having Nova is my kind of flagship book that came out in June 2022. So it's been 3 years nearly of pushing that first main book. And it does get difficult, even in terms of logistics. If you can't run a promotion more than every once in a while, because people are going to get bored of seeing that one book on 99p promotion. So it is challenging, definitely. I think for me, the benefits outweigh the cost, but that's very much genre dependent. So I think there's a couple of things to think about. One is, what genre are you writing in? Because the reason we're doing this talk is because when we were in Ireland, I was on a panel where we talked about this. And one of the questions that somebody asked was, what genre should I write in? I know I need to write in a series, so what genre should I write in? And we all said, you need to start with figuring out what genre you want to write in and then look at what is typical for that genre. What kind of series? What can you do? Because you don't have to, it's a big thing. There are a lot of standalone romances that do extremely well. Rom-coms, they're always pretty much a standalone. It does exist. So you need to think about what genre you want to write in, and then your writing style and what you're going to be happy writing. I have figured out that a 6-book series is too much for me. My brain just can't stay interested for 6 whole books. It's too much. Like, I've got shiny thing syndrome. I see the next new idea, and waiting for 6 books is painful. So 3 is kind of my optimum, but I think that's where you start. You start with what you want to write. Then you look at what's typical in the genre. Then you have to think about if it's going to fit your writing style, because you can't force yourself to write a 10-book series if that's really something that you're going to struggle with. Because by the time it gets to book 3 or 4, it's going to be like pulling teeth.
So for people listening, setting out, who are starting their career and perhaps hadn't properly thought through the serial thing, I guess what we're saying to them is look at what genre you're in. If you're in romance, romantasy, then this very tightly, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row may well work for you commercially. Mm-hmm. If you're in science fiction, if you're in military, a thriller, crime fiction, I would be a bit more wary about making any book dependent on having read a previous one in the series.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And even in the series or the genres like mine, one of the things that we all said on the panel was having this exit point. So you might think you want to write 6 books, but the fact of the matter is, if you get to book 3 and that series hasn't landed, it hasn't done what you thought it was going to do, people aren't liking it, you can't get the marketing to hit, it's going to be really hard for you to want to write the other 3. But it's also going to be really bad form for you to not finish the series, because there's going to be readers who love it and who've invested in it, and it could take off again at some point in the future. So it's kind of doing that, almost like that thing that Marvel do, where they interconnect series or they have things looping in and out. Kind of, I would aim for 3, have the ending of your complete story so that they can get to the end of book 3 and they know they're satisfied, it's complete, but have in your head a way that you can extend the story if it's really, really popular. So with my Phoenix Prophecy series, I wrote 6 and then I waited. It was completely wrapped up. The story was completely wrapped up, but there were a couple of tiny little Easter eggs that no one even noticed. So it wasn't, this is frustrating, this hasn't been wrapped up. They were so small that you wouldn't notice them, that I knew were in there in case I wanted to write some more, in case people were still asking for more. I left it about 6 months and people were asking for more. So then I wrote another 3 books, which were another separate story arc to turn it into a 9-book series. So I think that's really important, because if you plan for 9 books, if you plan for 6 books and it doesn't work out, you need to have a way to exit that's going to leave your readers satisfied, but give you the ability to start something new if that's not working.
She woke up and it was all a dream.
Yeah, that's not going to land. Again,
halfway through book 4. Yeah, Dallas, I think. It wasn't a whole season of Dallas, or was it Dynasty, one of the 2?
I don't know. That's before my time.
But yeah, like Kenny Everett.
Yes.
So you were more or less the only person who hadn't heard of him. There were a couple of other people, but one of the
There were a couple who'd heard of him but didn't recognize. So James posted a photo in the Facebook group for those who listened last week and heard me saying I didn't know who it was, to try and prove that I was.
A couple of other people immediately said yes, an absolute genius, Steve Aitchison including it. So people go up in my estimation if they understand the importance of Kenny Everett. Okay, look, my final word on this, like we're gurus, we're just discussing it, but my final word on this is, if you really want people to read your next book, work on your characters. Because, again, thinking about slow horses, but there's a quote from Sharon Horgan on an advert for Ireland, which is running at the moment on TV. We've just been there. And she says, as good writers know, long after you've forgotten the story, you remember the characters. And that's the reason people really want to stay with you and go through the season. So it's not just about, and then ...
Completely agree.
So
and you can also use your back matter. So if you do have a story that wraps up, you can use your back matter to promote the first chapter of the next book and drag people through that way. You don't have to end it on a cliffhanger. There are ways, if it's a group of standalones, to get people to read the next one.
Yeah.
But analyze what happens in your genre, I think, is key.
I want somebody to be ballsy enough for the last line in their book to say, it was only then he realised he had 6 seconds left to live. You've got to buy book 2 then, haven't you?
There you go, do it.
Yeah. And then a year later, you're sitting there thinking, I have no idea how to get this person
Yes. Yeah.
into and out of.
The end of Nova is like that, actually. So the end of Nova, Cole gets kidnapped and she gets a text saying, meet me wherever it is, or the Viking dies. And that's the last line in the book.
Good thing to do, though. Write your heroes into
I've got
absolutely
incredible
impossible.
read-through. That's the thing. My read-through is.
There you go. Okay. Good discussion. So I think, for anybody who says 5 minutes until they start talking about the subject that says on the top of it, which we do get these comments occasionally, think of this as half and half. That's what this show's been. We were about the 20-minute point. We'd finished talking about news and stuff about the podcast and outside news, and 20 minutes or so talking about our subject. That's how.
Because I think we're not the traditional format of interviewing people, and I think that's why people are expecting that. Because normally in most shows you get that like little intro where it's like 10 minutes of chat, and then we go into the main show. That's never really been what this is about. Like, yes, we've got a main topic of conversation, but it is that kind of like, we're here for a chat, not just to lecture you about something.
Okay, and I'm going to plant the seed. So we talked about Slow Horses. I think Slow Horses is a very, very good and enjoyable series to watch, but also one that we can talk about and deconstruct. So it's on Apple in the UK. I guess it's on Apple in the States as well. And I know everyone has loads of subscriptions and don't necessarily have Apple at the moment. It's like $8.99 a month. So I think you can start.
And you can get a free trial. So even just do the free trial, watch it.
There's 4 seasons. Fantastic. They're making 5 and 6 has been commissioned as well. So they're coming down. They're based on Mick Herron's books. So each season is a book. So I'm thinking about reading the book ahead of season 5 to see how that feels. But the other thing, I think if people watch Slow Horses, and how about Gladiator 2? Because that's a different type of discussion. And there's 2 that we can...
we can say about Gladiator 2.
Yes, me too. I'll have to watch it again to remember everything that made me feel.
Do we have to?
And we'll do that perhaps when I get back from Aruba. It gives people a month or so to watch those.
Yeah, that would be good. And I just wanted to say as well, talking about the series stuff and people starting out, this is the sort of thing, if you are in the Discord, especially if you've got the top tier Patreon and you get the super channel where we give advice, that's the sort of thing you can ask us about, because it's much easier to answer that question if we've got somebody saying, this is the genre that I want to write in, this is what I'm thinking about doing, what do you think? That's going to be much easier for us to give advice than trying to kind of capture it all. So that's the sort of thing you can ask us about if you're in the channel.
Excellent. What fun chatting to you, Cara.
It really was. It was delightful. I'm sad that I've got to go and do some real work now.
Yeah, me too. So next week we'll probably record a couple of episodes. We're hoping to do 1 episode from Aruba. Depends on the Wi-Fi, etc. That should be okay. It's a modern
I don't
Caribbean.
Really want to talk to you while you're in Aruba, to be fair. I've got such FOMO.
I'll do it in the darkest part of my room I can find, so it looks like I'm in a hovel.
I'll set my Zoom background to a beach.
Yeah.
I'll turn up in a sun hat and some sunglasses. I'll just pretend that I'm there.
Very good. Okay, that's it. Until next week, don't forget you can support us on Patreon if you go to indiewritersclub.com/support, and you can join our Facebook group, indiewritersclub.com/Facebook. That's it. Bye.
Support the podcast and get exclusive access by joining our Patreon. From just $1 an episode, you'll be invited to our Discord server, where the weekly discussion continues every day. And our 2 top tiers include a monthly live Q&A with James and Cara. Head to indiewritersclub.com/support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. We'll see you next Friday.